A number of arguments and statements have been made, including by the Attorney General, that there are quite a few of these incidents, tens of thousands of these incidents over the last number of years. But overwhelmingly, these despicable incidents are vandalism, many by juveniles and juveniles. So let me make clear that even those incidents are significant and deserve prosecution and investigation, and where appropriate, stiff punishment. But let's look at the views of the members of the United States Commission on Civil Rights, our own U.S. Civil Rights Commission, who have examined this legislation carefully. 6 of its 8 members, I believe that's correct, eight members, signed a strong letter to the President and to the Judiciary Committee to oppose it because they're a Civil Rights Commission? No. I mean, to favor it? No. But to oppose it. Their letter, dated June 16th, just last month, addressed to the members of the Senate and the President, said this, quote, "We believe that the MSHCPA, that's the bill, will do little good and a great deal of harm. Its most important effect will be to allow federal authorities to re-prosecute a broad category of defendants who have already been acquitted by state juries, as the Rodney King case and the Crown Heights cases more than a decade ago. Due to the exception for prosecution by dual sovereigns, that is, the 2 sovereign entities, such double prosecutions technically are not violation of the double jeopardy clause of the U.S. Constitution, but they are very much a violation of the spirit that drove the framers of the Bill of Rights, who never dreamed that federal criminal jurisdiction would be expanded to the point where an astonishing proportion of crimes are now both state and federal offenses. We regard the broad federalization of crime as a menace to civil liberties. There is no better place to draw the line on that process than with a bill that purports to protect civil rights." Close quote. And then they go on to say, while the title of the bill suggests that it will apply only to hate crimes, the actual criminal prohibitions contained in it do not require that the defendant be inspired by hatred or ill will in order to convict. It is sufficient if he acts because of someone's actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Consider. Rapists, I'm quoting from the Civil Rights Commission's letter, rapists are seldom indifferent to the gender of their victims. They are virtually always chosen because of their gender. A robber might well steal only from women or the disabled because in general they are less able to defend themselves. Literally, these victims are chosen because of their gender or disability. And the letter goes on to state their belief that every rape in America would now be declared a crime under this bill because it's an action taken against someone because of their gender. Professor Gail Heriot, a member of the United States Commission on Civil Rights, testified at our June 25th hearing. She made clear that all rapes would be covered under the bill and that indeed this was intentional. She said, quote, "This wasn't just sloppy draftsmanship. The language was chosen deliberately. Officials understandably wanted something susceptible to broad construction, in part because it makes prosecutions easier. As a staff member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Back in 1998, I had conversations with the Department of Justice representatives. They repeatedly refused to disclaim the view that all rape would be covered and resisted efforts to correct any ambiguity by redrafting the language. They wanted a bill with broad sweep. The last thing they wanted was to limit the scope of the statute's reach by requiring that the defendant be motivated by ill will toward the victim's group. Close quote. I think that's a serious charge made by a member of the Civil Rights Commission about the purpose of the Department of Justice in supporting this act. And I would note it's a inevitable delight of prosecutors to have more and more power and more ability to prosecute criminals. That's what they do. They're just wonderful people. I never enjoyed anything more than being a prosecutor, wearing the white hat every day to work and trying to vindicate decent people from criminal acts. But that's just a tendency of the prosecutorial mindset that we ought not to forget. So the truth is that during the recent hearing, no one who testified in favor of the bill could point to a single instance where I think a valid hate crime was not pursued or prosecuted by state and local law enforcement officers. In the latest statistics that are available of the 2006 hate crimes reported, only 9 were classified as murder or non-negligent manslaughter. And that's certainly 9 too many. And I think everyone should be prosecuted. But no complaints have been raised that any of these were not vigorously or fairly prosecuted. Indeed, 2/3 of the offensive involved property defacement, such as graffiti and also including name-calling. Missing from the analysis is any evidence that the crimes are not being prosecuted at the state and local level. Indeed, 45 of the 50 states and the District of Columbia already have and enforce hate crime bills. Although the language is broad and some could criticize it, these states have passed these bills and they are able to enforce them. And the question is, if they don't enforce them, who does? Statistics show that these hate crimes, even with better reporting, have decreased slightly over the years. 44 states have stiffer penalties for violence related to race, religion, or ethnicity, and 31 states have tougher penalties on violence related to sexual orientation. So the question arises, do we have a basis for this massive and historic change in federal enforcement of what has been state crimes? Perhaps Mr. Andrew Sullivan, an openly gay man who has pioneered the effort to have gays in the military and is well-known and able writer, had this to say about the legislation. The real reason for hate crime laws is not the defense of human beings from crime. There are already laws against that, and Matthew Shepard's murderers are successfully prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law in a state that had no hate crime law at the time. The real reason for the invention of hate crimes was a hard left critique of the conventional liberal justice and the emergence of special interest groups which need boutique legislation to raise funds for their large staffs and luxurious buildings. Just imagine how many direct mail pieces have gone out explaining that without more money, more gay human beings will be crucified on fences. It's very, very powerful as a money-making tool, which may explain why the largely symbolic federal bill still haven't passed. If it passes, however, I'll keep a close eye on whether or not it's ever used, close paren.